Right, welcome to episode 197 of Retropower and Cut. And Nat's still away on his holidays, so I'm going to be flying solo again on this one. What I will say before I get stuck in is watch to the end of the video, because there's going to be a couple of things at the end that you might be interested in. One is an event announcement, the other is that the key rings that we put up, I think it was last week or the week before, I thought, 100 key rings, that'll last ages. Sold them all out in like, well, a matter of hours basically. So we've had a different batch done, so if you watch to the end, we'll show you those. Anyway, let's get stuck in. So, Jaguar XJC, Project Portofino. Other door skin is now done. I showed this one being done last week. That's all been finessed and shaped and looking good. And then we've moved on to the other side. I'm not going to dwell on that one too much because it's basically a repeat of the offside on the near side. But as I mentioned last week, both skins were surprisingly good in terms of their shape. So it's gone pretty smoothly, and now we've moved on to the front wings, which Matt is just on at the minute. We were having a look together at these yesterday. You can get, I can't remember whether you can get a full wing, but you can certainly get a front repair section. But having dealt with these before when we built an XJC previously, I know that's going to be traumatic in terms of the shape. So what we've decided to do is actually repair these wings. They're not too bad. There's some bits gone along the bottom at the back on this one, and then the usual bit around the headlight. There's quite a hidden area, because interestingly on these there's an air intake underneath the top of the headlight which feeds air to a vent in the footwell in the car originally. And the headlight bezel, the chrome part, actually has a little grille at the top of it. It's quite a cool design actually, so the kind of air hitting the headlight is basically shoved upwards through an intake and then down a duct that sits under the top of the wing, which has like a divider partition underneath it to protect it. And then that goes down into a little, you can see actually there's a spigot on the sort of footwell area at the side. But consequently, because it's got quite a deep hidden area around the headlight, always gets crap stuck in there and they always rust out around there. And although this one looked good, as all cars do, as soon as you strip the paint off and start digging a bit, there's a few rotten bits. So we're going to actually repair these wings. Because it's very difficult to get around that area, Matt's going to cut this out. So although you can separate the headlight bowl, it still has quite a deep hidden area around there anyway. So he's literally going to cut all the way around this line he's just marked out here, so that we can properly clean up in that bit. And then he'll repair all of that section there, weld that back in, and then there's a few frilly bits kind of around here that need repairing. But it shouldn't be too bad. And at least using kind of OE wing, the general shape and fit is good. We already know the fit's good to the doors, so that's going to be the plan of attack on that. And then Tom has finished the inner arch, which was the traumatic one. We're working on the car this way up at the minute because the two guys are working on it. Getting that inner arch in there is a bit of a pain. Even if you were able to rotate it over, it's still a right fiddle getting the inner arch kind of shuffled into place enough to see how the fit is against the remnants of the upper. And that constant process of taking it out, doing some tweaks, putting it back in, checking the fit when you're trying to do an edge-to-edge weld on it is pretty time consuming, but is there with the near side now and moved on to the offside outer. So that is moving nicely in the right direction. Move on to E-Type. So a bit of a change around here at the minute, because Bobby's working on this and Bobby's work was kind of getting in the way of what Stu wanted to do. And we know that we're imminently going to have the rear end bodywork, or the first parts of it, through from Andy Hall. On this, I thought I'd move him onto this and start removing the original rear end, which is going very well. So what we wanted to do first was just build a bit of a jig, which we put in place before we removed all the bodywork, which basically jigged the position of the boot aperture, because those inner structure panels will remain standard. We've got to clean them up, give them some protection. But those bits will remain as they are, and all the new bodywork will basically go over the top of that. So it jigs the position of those, and what we'll do is the upper part of the rear body will all go into place first. That'll then allow, and then we'll move the support towers there, because obviously they'll be in the way of the boot floor, which is also part of the new bodywork. So the whole rear end going all the way back under to that horizontal seam, which Stu's kind of pointing out now conveniently, will be all part of the new bodywork. So at that point we'll be able to put the lower section in and do all the welds, which I think Andy will probably do here, so it'll be interesting to see him doing that. What's quite interesting about this, and I'm intrigued if somebody has more knowledge of these to explain why this bit looks so rough on these cars. It kind of looks like they had an arch tub, which they'd planned to use, and then realised some of it didn't work, because this bit doesn't look like, it looks like this was a complete panel. And then at Jaguar, because I know this is what they're like, they kind of just cut the back end of it off, roughly mashed it into this section here, which I'm guessing is a carryover from maybe an earlier one. And then they obviously had a bit of arch clearance issue as well, and they basically slit the arch tub here, bent it out, and spot welded a little filling piece in there. It's all very odd, but talking to Tom, who used to work at Martin Roby's, who make a lot of repair panels for these, he said, yeah, that is what they're like. Even the new repair panels they make are like that. So yeah, somebody with some E-type knowledge, fill me in on the story here, because it definitely looks a bit like Jaguar-based bodgery, like they planned something and then we're like, oh, that doesn't work, well, never mind, we'll just mash this bit in. So yeah, that's where we're at with that. Really, really excited to show you the progress on the bodywork for the rear end, which I'm guessing we'll see in the next week or two. Bobby is continuing the banging ahead against the wall with the steering geometry on this, but he's about there. Essentially moving on from where we were last week, trying to get the Ackerman right. He's been working through various iterations of rack position and steering arm position. And I think he's now building up some mock-up steering arms so we can then use the geometry of those to make some billet steering arms. But actually we managed to catch Bobby in the CAD den earlier this week, and although it wasn't really a planned recording, what he said was actually quite interesting, so I'm going to just put that over now and let Bobby just do a little talk through what he's been doing in terms of the geometry.
Yeah, so this is your steering rack here, that line. That's what is determining now how much Ackerman we can get, because the limit is this point you want to have further in close to the wheel, but then you're limited with the front steering rack because you're hitting discs and you just can move it only so far. That's why you have to play with this angle here between the steering rack and tie rod ends. And you can see now this is your ideal Ackerman, so you have a 90-degree projecting down from the wheels, and then they intersect here in a point running from the centers of the rear wheels. Now, so this is your perfect Ackerman. That's what you want. So in any given angle, say we go for 30 degrees. We go for 30 degrees angle. See, they're still tracking here the line. They should intersect here. No, they should ideally. If they intersect somewhere in the front, you're gonna have more oversteer in the corner. If they intersect somewhere here in the guide, you're gonna have more understeer, and the car is trying to push in the corner forward. That's the thing, and you can see now the difference. If I change the angle, I just have to delete this. I have to reset the suspension because it's pretty much as you would do on the car. This, don't let me do that. So if we change this to 90, so that's 0, we'll delete this. So yeah, so I'll change the rack going as it was in the car. Let's say it was in the car about 150, I think it was. Yeah, I'll just go 145. Yeah, so that was how they left before the steering rack. So here the angle is actually quite the opposite. And see what happens now when we project our lines. I'll delete this. So you have to put a measurement here to fix this, otherwise it will move. Like that. So when we steer, we'll put an angle here of, again, say 25 degrees. Yeah, so now if we project our lines, they should be perpendicular to the wheels. So this is perpendicular, and then you intersect them in that line projected from the rear axle. So see what's happening. See, just moving the steering rack forward, it's pretty much is bringing you a parallel steering, so you're losing the effect of having a tighter here radius and a longer radius in the corner. So if you parallel, the car is going to push in massive oversteer, understeer. So that's what's the difference, is just moving the rack forward and back end. That's exactly the problem when they fit the rack. They fit the rack exactly 60mm forward and higher as well, and that's where the height gave us a bad bump steer, and front and after give us a lack of accurement. But because of the restraints of the rack, we just can't move anywhere the rack anymore. So we just have to accept that we have a little not ideal situation with the accurate, but still better. But that's how it was before. And you can see what's more and see where they intersect, nowhere nearly parallel to each other.
Oh, thank you for that, Bobby. And we'll move on to body shop. If we sneak over here, so it's all Allegro based. We'll have a look in through the plastic curtain, which is keeping the grit out of here. Now, Gaz was on form so much with the paint on this that he actually caught Jamie out and painted it without him realising, so we haven't got any footage of it actually being painted. But as you can see, everything's looking decidedly English mustard in there. And now this, is it Harvest Gold? Is that right? I can never believe the colours. I mean, there's an antique gold, which is also like a slightly greener one. I think that's what Johnny Smith's Allegro is. And both of them are the most optimistic title of colour you could ever imagine. I mean, this is definitely English mustard, not Harvest Gold, but it's such a cool colour, like just ridiculously 70s. So after a bit of head scratching, we decided to paint this in 2-pack solid colour. Gaz was in favour of that. We were debating a bit back and forth on whether to do base coat and clear or 2-pack solid. Now, 2-pack solid colour is quite an old-fashioned way to paint things. There are pros and cons, really. It's easier to get a nicer finish with the clear coat. It's harder to polish the 2-pack gloss, but Gaz and I both preferred the finish of it. In terms of it's still looking a bit like a 70s car. It's quite difficult to explain, but you get a depth with clear coat that kind of makes it look very modern. And you can polish 2-pack solid colour to a really nice, flat, really shiny finish, which looks great, but it still has that sort of slight lack of depth, which very much makes it look like a perfected 70s paint job rather than a 2024 paint job. So that's why we went down that route. And then they're just in the process of doing the flatting and polishing now. So starting off, what do you start off with, Gaz? 1500 Trizact, something like that on the DA, or 2000? But yeah, okay. So 1500 discs, then moving on to 2000 discs on a soft pad, and then they'll use, on most of the flatter areas, a really hard acrylic block with 2000 grit on, wet sand it all, and then Steve's just hitting it with some of the compound now. So I would imagine he's going in with Ferrecla G360, which is just a great start to finish compound, to be honest. It cuts quick, but it takes it to quite a nice finish. What's he going, G360 Gaz, and then moving on to something else?
G360 and a bit of fast cut, 3M fast cut.
Ah yeah, so G360 and then a bit of 3M fast cut as well. Presumably that does a slightly finer than the G360.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, it's looking great. We'll probably go over with then the 3M, I think it's called Ultra Fina off the top of my head. You can see I'm not got my game in the body shop too much at the minute, but basically progressively finer grades of polishing compound. And then yeah, I can't wait to see that all come together. It's great just seeing it even with the wings on, so looking forward to seeing bonnet, boot, doors all on. We're not far off that. And then Gaz, who I was just chatting to then, is preparing the next one. So this one is just getting ready for underside Raptor. This is going an orange colour. It's a very, very close to vermilion red, which is an original Allegro colour. I've just gone slightly more orange on it. So it's going to do the Raptor on the underside, and then it'll be a series of remaskings, but remask, do the exterior paint, and then obviously all the panels as well. I think the underside of the wings will be Raptored first before final paint, but we'll see that progressing over the coming weeks. you can see we've been painting Harvest Gold in here, well, the fact the film on the walls is covered in the stuff. Right, that is that. Just looking at these as well. So that's the slam panel for the Allegro, and then actually the boot hinges, which I think we've got some shots of Bobby doing some final welding on, because he tacked these up during the dry build stage where the gas struts attached to them. Bonnet's going on some fancy billet hinges, but with the boot lid we figured it was kind of unnecessary because you don't really see them very much. So we've just modified the originals to put a mounting on for gas struts that open the boot now. So that's that. What I'm going to do is unusually take a sweep upstairs, this way, up the tradesman's entrance, through the slightly scruffier storage area. So this is where a lot of the parts are stored. This bit here really needs sorting out because that is a legacy sort of seal and hose storage which has kind of been superseded now. But we'll make our way up here. And what I may do actually briefly is just stand at the top of here and gesticulate. You'll see no Richard here actually at the minute. As you'll know, he's now moved to the den. So, actually no, tell you what, change of plan. We'll go and see what the CAD guys are up to. Hello.
Hey.
Right, so 2 prongs of attack are going on in here. George is at the, well, finally made it to the exciting stage of the Saab project. So what he's been doing is basically sorting out all the scan data for the 2 body shells we've scanned, i.e. the Saab shell and the Audi S4 shell. Now you might think you just simply scan the shell and there you have a CAD model, but it's not quite that simple. So yes, George wishes. So we basically scan it in lots of sections and then stitch all the sections together. Well, this is within the Peel software, isn't it, George? I'm right in saying, yeah. And then there's a lot of sort of cleaning and tidying, and actually the Peel software is extremely good for this, but because it's a reflective light-based scanner, you do get a level of imperfection in there. So sometimes there's issues with surfaces not being quite as smooth as they should be, or gaps in the scan which you can kind of actually manually fill in the Peel software. So there's quite a lot of time goes into basically manipulating, perfecting and stitching together all the scan sections, and then a period of double checking, because with this sort of 3D scanner, when it's not a sort of a datum ARM based scanner, there is potential for, by the time you've started at one end of the car, moved all the way to the other, for some degree of warpage and things not to quite line up. So there's a process of kind of double checking dimensions, getting key reference points from the scan and checking them against the actual car, and just making sure you're 100% at this point, because ultimately this will be the foundation for a lot of the design work. And bear in mind, we're going to be designing most of the body panels for this car. We want to make absolutely sure at this point everything is dimensionally correct, so we don't have problems further down the line. So that's the bulk of what George has been on with. And then overlaying the S4 floor pan with the Saab body to work out the exact position, particularly up and down wise. Obviously we're getting the front axle line aligned fore and aft. The rear axle line we know is further back on the Audi because we're going to shorten the floor pan. But the critical thing is what height we are going to put the Audi floor pan within the Saab shell to get A, the look that we want, and make sure that the suspension travel is still within the sort of range that the Audi originally had. Hello, good morning. That's all right. Yes, to make sure the suspension travel is within the range that the Audi originally had, and then move on to looking at whether everything actually fits under the silhouette of the Saab body, so particularly engine bay related stuff, because we're keen to keep the bulkhead area of the Audi fairly standard, so things like the positioning of the battery, the brake servo, the master cylinder, we want to make sure that fits within the constraints of the Saab bonnet, which we're quite limited on at the back, where it meets the windscreen scuttle area. We don't really want to change that area. Further forward, we can subtly change it. We can raise the centre of the bonnet, which is in the plan, so we can give ourselves a bit more room towards the front of the engine. But we essentially want to make sure that we don't get to a point where we're designing the body and go, oh, hang on a minute, this critical part that we definitely want to use in that position doesn't actually fit within the constraints of the confines of the body. So that's looking good. We've settled on a height for that. And then the next thing really is wheels and choosing what wheel dimensions we want to go with. Now we've decided to go 8x18 as an initial stab. I think 18 diameter will look right for the look we want, and obviously it will give us clearance on the brakes, which I think were 17-inch wheels on the Audi. Don't want to go excessively wide with the wheels, and we do, because it's 4x4, I want the same wheel and tyre dimensions all round. So we're pretty convinced 8x18 is going to be the one to go for. So George has now modelled roughly a 3-spoke in 8x18, and we've chosen a tyre size, so we can basically fit up those wheels in CAD onto the Audi hubs. And that then gives us all the elements we need to start modelling the actual body shape, because obviously we need to know how much wheel we need to cover. And when we did the scan phase on the Audi, we also scanned it with the suspension, full bump, full droop, all sorts of steering angles. So now we can model the tyres and wheels moving through all of those angles. So when we're doing the bodywork design, we can make sure there's no collisions between bodywork and wheel and tyre. So that's where we're at with that. And then Luke is on with Allegro Dash. So in the early stages of the Allegro interior planning, we were thinking about using the original dash top. And we've designed all of the lower section, we've designed the instrument cluster, but we were going to extend sort of manually with foam the original dash. But it got to the point where I was looking at it and thinking, oh, we want to change the vents, we want to change the design of the fascia on it. It's not in the perfect condition, and where we extend it forward, we're going to have to join kind of the cut edge of the vinyl that covered the foam on there originally. It's just not going to be possible to do that neatly. So we've moved on to actually modelling that in CAD. And I think we're going to make it as a series of 3D prints which are bonded together. So Luke started with a scan of the original dash. He's then modelled that kind of as an accurate shape rather than the slightly wavy 1970s dash shape. Done some changes, so where the vents mount, a few cosmetic changes just to make it more how we want it to look, a little bit cleaner looking. We'll do a few changes just to make it more upholsterable because it's going to be leather wrapped. And then what we're going to do is, well, we have already stripped the original foam and vinyl off the metal dash frame, and we're going to scan the metal dash frame. In fact, I think he's already done that, and then basically extrude the shape of the front of the dash back to the original metal dash frame to create a series of sections which will actually attach to the original Allegro mounting frame, but recreate the shape that visibly that we want elsewhere. So it's just sort of working through. We did a few reviews yesterday. We were trying to assess the order of assembly. We were trying to have hidden fasteners on the instrument binnacle, but then realised if we did that, you'd have to put the binnacle on first and then all the dash in. And if you wanted to get to the wiring to the warning lights and instruments, you would literally have to take the entire dash out of the car. So decided to change things around a bit, actually have 4 visible bolts from the front, which won't look too offensive. We'll do those black Xylan plate coated, but it does mean you just take 4 bolts off and that whole cluster comes out. Ditto the lower section that's going to have the audio control and the Motec display in. Again, we were going to bolt that in from the back to make it look cleaner, but it was going to be extremely difficult to get those bolts in, so we decided to have visible bolts on that. So we can basically put all of the dash in first, and then that panel and the instrument cluster will bolt in afterwards. So pretty happy with that plan. I think we've just got to do the extrusion of the dash forwards to the windscreen, do the demist vents and bezels, and then I think we're getting there with that. So it won't be long until we start actually printing stuff, which is quite exciting, because obviously we've seen some of the Allegro interior coming together already. Right, let's have a mosey back out here. What I may do is just do a little fast forward from this point and magically appear downstairs. Right, as if by cinema magic, I'm on my way downstairs. So we're going to cover Churchill and Project One. So Churchill, Anthony's been working on the brake plumbing for that. So he's got the front to rear, we've done that in stainless braided Teflon lined flexible hose all the way. We've done a link in the same from the master cylinder to a T-piece on the inner wing, just so we've got continuity in terms visibly of the pipes coming out of the master cylinder. Then we've done the crossover and the lines to both front calipers, or at least to the inner wing is where the flexes will attach, in ATEC hardline, just because to get that crossover pipe across the bulkhead really tidy looking, it really needs to be in hardline, because a sort of flexi line routed across there just won't quite look as crisp. I'm trying to give this engine bay quite an OEM sort of look to it, so I think that'll work really nicely. And then we've got ATEC fittings, so ATEC T-piece, little bulkhead 90 degrees through the inner wings there, T-piece at the back, and then he's been working actually on the rear axle. In fact, I can just whiz over here. So he's been doing, yeah, here we go. So mounting point for ATEC T-piece on the rear subframe, hard lines going across, 90-degree bulkheads through the subframe here, and then from that point it'll be flexi lines up to the calipers on each side. So we're just getting all of this stuff in place, because once these subframes go in, you then have an inaccessible area above the subframe, which means you can't then do the plumbing routing over there. So we're creeping extremely close now to getting these in. I'm just waiting for the upper wishbones for the front subframe to be machined. They're 80% done. I think he's got to do the flip over and final operation on those. And then we should be in a position to get these in the car and get it rolling. It will be on temporary wheels at the minute, but I'm very excited to see that point. Project 1, we finished the sort of stiffening up and sound deadening of the boot floor, and then I've been out doing some test driving work in that. Pretty happy with the refinement. Still a bit of resonance in the shell, kind of 3,000 RPM upwards. Cruises really nicely below that, sort of 2,000 RPM cruise, 2 to 2.5. It's really, really surprisingly refined. The other thing on that is, whilst we were out test driving, and then because every time we go out, Alex then studies the Motec data logging, which is an extremely useful feature. It was great in the Land Cruiser. I was looking at the logs on that the other day because we had an airlock in the heating system on it, which meant that it had a temperature spike, but it was great to be able to look back through the logs and analyse all of that. Same on this. We were looking through the data logs, and then Alex just happened to notice a random spike in the throttle position on the throttle motor. So this is fly-by-wire, and it has 2 throttle position sensors, one on the actual motor and one on the throttle bodies on the butterfly in the position you traditionally associate the throttle pot being. And it monitors the position of the two. Now, of course, they should always match. The ECU will call for the throttle motor to be in a certain position. It will cross-reference that to the position from the pot on the motor and to the pot on the throttle bodies. And it will, if there's any mismatch in those for any significant length of time, it will go into a limp mode. And we noticed just a random sort of spike, only for literally like a 10th or a 20th of a second on the one on the throttle motor. And it wasn't even long enough for me to notice anything driving it or to flag any kind of warning on the ECU. But we then took it out more and more and started noticing that spike more often. And then it got to the point where I actually noticed I could feel it. You know, just at first I thought, oh, I swear I felt something slightly odd then. And then actually after a while, you know, and it was only happening at sort of 7,500, 8,000 RPM. But after a while, it was quite a noticeable blip in the power delivery. And it appeared that basically one of the sensor on the throttle motor was going momentarily a long way out of range, and that was throwing essentially a momentary limp home warning and backing the power off slightly and then coming back in again. So we've been working out what that could be, and it seems really likely it's only wiring or the sensor itself. Now, we changed the sensor last thing yesterday, took it out for a quick squiz, and it seemed okay, but I want to just get some more miles on it and make sure we don't see that come back, or at least, which is easy to do because we can look at the traces on the Motec logging and see if there's any sign of the same thing coming back. But our suspicion, Alex and I, is that it's some kind of resonant frequency in the engine actually causing a fault in a sensor that's maybe got something slightly loose inside it. So I'm fairly sure it's a sensor fault, but I think it was just being caused at a certain RPM by the resonance of the engine. So hopefully we've solved that. And then, yeah, that's pending a little bit more testing and making sure that problem is gone. That's going to go back to its owner. And likewise, actually, the Mustang behind me, I think next week we'll be going. So hopefully we'll be 2 cars down in here next week. In here, that's covered about everything, except the Allegro engine build. So I'm going to hand over to Jim for a moment to talk about what he's been doing with the Honda VTEC engine.
Thanks, Cal. We're here in the engine room today looking at the B18 Honda engine that I've been stripping. Last week, I think it was shown when I was taking all the blanking plugs and plates off of the engine after it was blasted. So we kept a lot of the sensors and everything on the engine because we will be replacing those anyway. And there's no point taking them out and then plugging the holes again anyway. So it worked quite well to do all of the exterior blasting with all of those things still in place. So I removed all those, brought it in here, now it's relatively clean, to start the strip down. This is going through everything that comes off the engine, annotating it, bagging it up, taking pictures, ready for plating or whatever process is required. Whilst doing that, any of the key components within the engine I'm inspecting, making sure there's no adverse wear that's occurred anywhere. Generally just making sure the engine was happy, and for an engine of this, which I think was over 100,000 miles, it looks incredibly good, to be fair. There's hardly any lip at the top, just a slight bit of carbon. Bores all look really nice. All the journals and everything at the minute look in very good condition. I will be going on to measuring all of these and just verifying all of the key dimensions are within spec and all right to use again. The cylinder head and engine block will be getting washed imminently. So all the bungs are now out of the engine, all of the oil gallery plugs and bungs which typically you never touch. but due to us making sure it's comprehensively cleaned in and out, that's the only way of ensuring that there's no particles that have got into any of the galleries or drillings in the castings. So that's the next step for the casting part. So I'll then move on to, as I say, measuring everything up, checking everything's good to go. And then it will be on to ordering all of the replacement bits for it, and hopefully in the next few weeks we'll start seeing it coming back together. So catch you next time. Cheers.
Thank you, Jim. And on that note, we're going to go down to the den and see what's going on down there and see what Richard's been up to. Okay, welcome back to the den. It's a hive of activity in here, so let's see what's going on. Now there's a couple of pretty interesting things I can see straight away. One is the ramp installation that's going on, and two is that we've got our first customer non-Retropower build in the unit. So that is exciting to see. I'll go into that a bit more in a minute. What I wanted to cover first actually was what we're going to be offering here in terms of mechanical servicing work. Obviously I've alluded to the fact we're doing that, and the main reason for taking on this premises was so we had a facility to do ongoing servicing work on Retropower customer builds. However, we are also going to be offering those services to the wider audience, the general public. Essentially targeting people who have got unusual, interesting, modified cars, classics, resto mods, cars where you essentially want somebody with a lot of specialist knowledge to look after that car, somebody who is used to working on that kind of car. And we've kind of identified an approach which we think is the right way to go about maintaining a car like that, which is not that common an approach, and that is to start with a very large inspection of that car to make sure we're all on the same page in terms of what is needed with that car, because we're all too familiar with that situation where something breaks. You're basically maintaining your car on the basis of things breaking and needing fixing. So something breaks on your car, you take it to a garage with instruction to fix that thing, and then it becomes disassembled to fix that thing, and of course along the way they then discover umpteen other things that need doing, and suddenly you're in way too deep, massive bills, and panic time. So our approach is that all new customers on all new cars start with a big inspection of that car. It's going to be over the course of a couple of days, minute detail with a very big report and supporting media. Essentially at that point you become a den member, and you will get presented with a portal login and a service book with a service schedule that we've devised that we think is suitable for that vehicle. And you'll be talked through all of the things that we've identified on that car, whether that be things that are just would be desirable to have or things that are absolutely need doing before the car is used safely. And then you can go away and choose what to book in, when to book it in, and we can work through those jobs. And essentially, as a den member, we then carry on the ongoing maintenance of that car. You have a service schedule that we can work to, you can book in appointments to suit you, and that's the way we want to work. So it's more akin to the type of service you'd expect when you were buying a brand new, performance car, supercar, whatever it might be, but applied to much more niche vehicles. So we are basically open for bookings. Obviously we're in the process of setting things up. There's also going to be an individual in charge of this mechanical side who we will introduce over the coming weeks, but needless to say, this individual is as competent, as experienced as Nat, me, any member of the Retropower team, if not more so, and certainly somebody you would want to entrust your vehicle to. So yeah, if you want to discuss the options, drop us an email, info@thedenautomotive.co.uk. On that note, we're going to walk over here. So this cool and ridiculously small little thing is a TVR Vixen, 1968 TVR Vixen, and this is our first non-Retropower upholstery job, if you like. Richard will talk about this a little bit more in a minute, but I just wanted to dwell on the car itself, which is just such a cool thing. I always automatically associate TVRs with V8s, but they weren't. This early days, this was a four-cylinder. These had a Kent Crossflow in. Previously to that, they had the old MG B-series engine in them. Of course, you will have seen these racing with V8s in and a lot of historic motorsport, but under the name Griffith, and of course that's the sort of birth of the Griffith name, which was actually an American guy, a car dealership owner in America, who was importing some of these, decided to put a Ford V8 in it and call it the Griffith, and a sort of almost a legend was born from there. But yeah, these cars were 4-cylinder. This one's now got a 200 horsepower Ford Zetec in it. And in something this light and this small wheelbase, that is the recipe for a huge amount of fun. I mean, that's basically that pure car format that gives you the ultimate driving machine. Engine back of the front axle line, very light, very compact, front engine, rear wheel drive, 200 horsepower in a car, sort of this light is just masses of fun. So yeah, very cool thing, very pleased to have this in the shop, and I would imagine this is going to be the first of many exciting and interesting vehicles we get to see here. And just sweep past Richard in his work area. He's been working obviously on the interior parts for this, and he's also been carrying on with some of the Allegro interior, the door cards, but I will get him to talk about what he's been up to.
How's it, everybody? Good to see you. As you can see, I'm in the new premises, absolutely stoked. What do they say? Good things comes to those who wait. So yeah, here's the proof. Very happy, absolutely loving it. So yeah, we're going to show you some cool stuff from these premises, and can't wait to see you at the opening day. What have I been busy with? Allegro, that's going on in the background. We're busy with the door cards. You saw us machining the actual cards from the die bond material. That worked really well. In the meantime, we received some clips. We decided on a design. We received the speaker grills, which look absolutely great, and that allowed me to start putting it together. So we've got the machined speaker grill, a 3D printed bezel for it, a card, and then just a one-to-one printout of the door handle, because we're still waiting for the actual handle. That's also a machined bit, and then the rest of it's going to be 3D printed. But this allows me to just see the footprint on the card, and then we can get much further, and by the time that goes on, let's do that separately, and then we just put them together. So what we've done here is it's working really nice. These fit so much better than what any trimmer can hand cut these boards, whether it's card, mill board, even the die bond. The router machine just does it. The precision is, way better. So basically all we did there was putting a high density foam, a low density foam, which allows us to cut some grooves out, as you can see there, where we then stick the seam. That gives us a bit of definition into the panels, and also most importantly, it allows us to hide the clips. That's usually a big problem that everybody battles with. In this case, after going through numerous clips, there's a place called Vehicle Clips, Automotive Fasteners. Great if you're ever looking for some clips. They've got thousands of different clips. These are actually VW van headliner hidden clips is what they're called, and basically what they allow you to do is it's a twist in, so you could just drill a hole dead center, you simply twist it in, and you don't have to worry about those keyhole clips that they're very difficult to line up and all that. So these also, it's got a double fin, you twist it in and then the clip holds itself, so even if I push from the back side, it doesn't create a bump, and that's what we were trying to avoid. Usually when you just use some of these clips and you put them in, you can see the witness marks where these are working out really good. And with us putting all the right foams in the right places and the right hole sizes, we've created a bit of play on the clip, because they need to sort of self-position them as you clip this thing in, and they're strong enough so we'll be able to take this door, put it on and take it off again without any hassles. So very choked with that. Fits really nice. Can't wait to fit them in the car so we can see it with that beautiful color that the car is going. So yeah, that is it. I think I'm going to leave it there. I'll tell you a little bit more once this handle is finished, because there's going to be some really cool detail on the handles. Don't know if some of you can remember the details, but I'm going to save it as a surprise for when it's finished. Next up is the TVR. that we're busy with. So cool little car. Cal introduced the car. I'm not going to go into that. It's only a small job, not meaning a small car, that too. Basically what happened with that car is the owner of the car was in process, final stages, upholstery. Due to reasons, the upholsterer couldn't finish the job, and then he contacted us and we basically finished it. So thank you for entrusting us to finish the job, because the work that has been done really good, and the car is looking nice on the inside. So what we're doing here is there was a small little bit on the rear parcel shelf carpet that need to be trimmed to shape. It was just work in progress where it was made, and then it's those final adjustments. So we dealt with that. We're gonna do a center console, just the top fascia bit, and then design, develop some gaiters and boots. You can see that's a different color, so that's obviously my first little sample. Bit of an odd shape for a handbrake boot, but the way and the depth and the way that lever works, so we'll see, but I'm sure you'll see the final outcome, but that's just the first off. So trimming that. Couple of door cards that we need to finish off. The customer actually supplied the really well, properly made cards with clips and the material, so all that was left for me to do is basically trim them quickly, make up some map pockets, which then just get a wire through, gets done. I think Jamie's got a shot of one of the door cards that's done. Yeah, chuffed with that. That comes good. He supplied some box weave vinyl for the inside, so he's got some nice textures, some nice lines, works with the car. So that's in there, and then the final job will be the roll cage. He wants me to do a leather cover of the roll cage, so that's it. So yeah, really small job. It's coming out nicely. Jamie will get some final shots when it's done, and yeah, it's a fun little project to work on for the first one and get the gears well greased and working. So I'll see you guys next week.
Thank you, Richard. And I will leave him to carry on working. We'll sweep round into what is gradually taking shape to be our kind of lounge and part of our event setup. So in here we're going to have some more tables and chairs around here. We'll have a TV on this wall. We will have cameras and microphones such that we can do some quite cool sofa chats, potentially going to launch a podcast series, which I'm very excited about. And that actually leads me on very nicely to the fact that we're going to do an opening event. So on the 21st of September, we're going to have a grand unveiling, shall we say, of the den. What our intention is to have a lot of extremely cool cars downstairs. We're going to curate is a better word, a display of awesome cars outside in the yard here as well. We're going to have a series of well-known people who are going to host the day, do various chats on camera in this very place here. We'll have food, we'll have drink, we'll have music. It'll just be an awesome day. So what I would like to do is get people to register their interest, because I need, from a catering point of view and an organisational point of view, to know roughly how many people are going to be at that event. Now, anyone is welcome along, but if you could go onto our website, thedenautomotive.co.uk, there's a link on there to a form you can fill in, just to fill in your basic details, how many of you are coming and what car you might be bringing, and then we can get a handle on numbers. We can also contact you to give you any further information about the event. If your car is one that we're interested in having displayed in a certain place, we will also get in touch with you about that. So yeah, super excited. 21st of September, huge event here. If you're in any way into cars, you need to come along. Go onto the website to register your interest. And on final note, keyrings. So I think it was 2 weeks ago now, I introduced a new range of Retropower keyrings, thinking, we've got 100 of these made, they'll take ages to sell. And they sell pretty much instantly. Basically, the desirable colours sold in like 2 hours, and then by the next morning, everything had gone. So I've had another batch done. Now I'm keen to keep these limited edition, so they're a slightly different design, and we're basically going to do a series of different variations of the same logo and colours, but in different shaped keyrings. So if you go onto the Retropower website, into the shop, I think we've got 150 at this time, and we will carry on going forward doing limited runs of 150 of each design. So if you want to go on there now, on your marks, get set, go buy keyrings.